All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jeff False with the Office of State Procurement, and I'm presenting today with Brad Van Oss. Brad and I are on a professional contracts team, and we're going to discuss the different types of professional service contracts and the importance of correctly classifying these contracts, along with the laws and statutes that govern each type. And we're also going to discuss the requirements for submitting contracts for review. And there are laws that govern OSP professional contracts, and we're going to discuss these for a minute. The Office of State Procurement is charged by law with adopting rules and regulations for the procurement, management, control, and disposition of all professional, personal, consulting, and commercial service contracts that are utilized by state agencies. OSP's professional contracts section is responsible for exercising regulatory and approval oversight over all PPCS contracts. In the Office of State Procurement on the professional contracts team, we're governed by several laws, which include, of course, the Louisiana Constitution, the Louisiana Revised Statute, Title 39, 1551 through 1755, which is the Louisiana Procurement Code, and the Louisiana Administrative Code, which is Title 34. There are also several executive orders that pertain to OSP professional contracts. JBE 1636 addresses cooperative endeavor agreements. JBE 1638 discusses accountability for line item appropriations. JBE 1637, which is known as the Hudson Initiative, and this is an economic development initiative for state agencies, which is aimed at developing and enhancing opportunities for small and emerging businesses. And the Executive Order JBE 1655 addresses emergency procedures for conducting state business. The applicability of law. All expenditures of public funds by the executive branch of Louisiana, regardless of their source, must follow the laws that govern OSP professional contracts. There are some exemptions, however, to the laws, and those exemptions are covered in the Revised Statute 39-1554 and 39-1619. Now let's talk about the different types of contract classifications. Each contract is required to have a classification type, which relates to the type of service that is being performed. And these classifications include professional, personal, consulting, social service, interagency, intergovernmental, and cooperative endeavors. And on the following slides, I'm going to go into more detail about each type of classification. So let's start with professional. Professional service, as defined by Louisiana Revised Statute 39-1556, means any work that is rendered by an independent contractor who has a professed knowledge of some department of learning or science used by its practical application to the affairs of others and the practice of an art founded on it. And these professions shall include, but they're not limited to, the list you see on the slide here, which are lawyers, doctors, dentists, psychologists, certified advanced practice nurses, veterinarians, architects, municipal advisors, engineers, land surveyors, landscape architects, accountants, actuaries, claim adjusters, pharmacists, and visiting professors. The next type of classification is personal. A personal service, as defined by Revised Statute 39-1556, means any work rendered by individuals which requires use of creative or artistic skills. And these classifications include, but not limited to, graphic artists, sculptors, musicians, photographers, writers, handwriting analysts, court reporters, foreign representatives, expert witnesses, paramedicals, therapists, private investigators, sign language interpreters, entertainers, and expert speakers. Next, we're going to discuss consulting. Consulting service, as defined by Louisiana Revised Statute 39-15-56, means any work other than professional, personal, or social by either individuals or firms who possess a specialized knowledge, experience, and expertise to investigate assigned problems or projects and to provide counsel, review, design, development, analysis, or advice in formulating or implementing programs or services or improvements in programs or services. And this type will include, but not limited to, management, finance, which are banking services, revenue enhancement, planning, data processing, advertising, public relations, personnel, accounting, and scientists. The next type of classification we're going to discuss is social services. And social services, as defined by Louisiana Revised Statute 39-15-56, means any work rendered by any person, firm, corporation, organization, governmental body, or governmental entity in furtherance of the general welfare of the citizens of Louisiana. And these services include, but are not limited to, rehabilitation and health support, habituation and socialization, protection for adults and children, improvement of living conditions and health, and evaluation, testing, and remedial educational services. They also cover such areas as teen pregnancy prevention, Louisiana rehab services, daycare services, transportation services, and victims of family violence and adoption services. The next slide is just a continuation of the previous slide, and it's addressing other areas as energy assistance, weatherization, distribution of food commodities, identifying, assessing, and evaluating handicapped children, and development of individualized educational programs for disabled or handicapped children. And these are just a few. Like I said, it's not limited to these, but these are the main ones that social services covers. Next, we're going to discuss interagency contracts. An interagency contract is defined by Revised Statute 39-15-56 as any contract in which each of the parties is a governmental body. It's basically a contract between two or more executive branch governmental bodies. And interagency contracts must be submitted to OSP for review by the professional contracts team. Also, interagency contracts are exempt from the RFP process regardless of value, but they must follow all other contract requirements. Next, we're going to discuss intergovernmental contracts. An intergovernmental contract, as defined by Louisiana Revised Statute 39-15-56, is any contract between a state agency and a political subdivision, being local or federal. Political subdivisions ordinarily include police juries, parishes, counties, cities, towns, villages, school districts, sanitation districts, utility districts, and of course drainage and flood districts, just to name a few. Intergovernmental contracts are exempt from the OSP review and approval under Revised Statute 39-15-54, but there's exception for social services contracts. Intergovernmental contracts for social services between the state of Louisiana and one of its own political subdivisions are within the procurement code, and therefore they must be submitted to OSP for review. Now let's discuss cooperative endeavor contracts. Cooperative endeavor means any agreement, including one of cooperative financing, other than a competitive bid or competitively negotiated contract. Cooperative endeavor financing means any method of financing integral to a cooperative endeavor between and among the state or its agencies and any non-public person. These methods shall include loans, loan guarantees, land write-downs, grants, lease guarantees, or or any form of subsidy or incentive. With co-op agreements that expend funds, they must be sent to OSP for review and approval by the PC team. Co-ops that are based on line item appropriation must follow a specific format and a set of guidelines developed by the commissioner. For line item appropriations, the co-ops are governed by Executive Order JBE 16-38 and JBE 16-36. The Executive Order guidelines and required format for line item appropriation co-ops, it can be found on our website, on the OSP website, under professional contracts. There's also an abundance of other very helpful information pertaining to professional contracts on our website. And the website also includes contract templates, forms, guidelines, and instructions on submitting contracts for review. Just a very helpful site. If you ever had a chance to look at it, there's a lot of useful information on there pertaining to professional contracts. And I just wanted to say, if you're ever in any doubt as to what classification your contract may fall under, I want to encourage you to please give the PC team a call, and we can help you out with that. It's a lot easier to do it on the front end before you submit your contract, and then we have to change the classification of it and send it back to you. Because going through the approval process in LaGov can take a while. So if we can get it correct on the front end, it'll be a lot more helpful to both of us. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brad, and he's going to discuss the requirements and approvals for contracts.
I do have one question before we turn it over. Do any of these statutes apply to Title 38 also?
Title 38, that's...
Yeah, I'm not really sure about Title 38. I don't think these statutes that I just listed are going to pertain to Title 38. Like I said, we basically deal with Title 39 here at OSP, but we can get you an answer on that.
All right, good morning, everybody. So the minimal contract requirements as required by RS 39-1625, you have to have specific beginning and end dates in contracts, real ones, not shall begin on date of approval or extend for 1 year. An example would be July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. You have to have a description of work and your goals and objectives, and this is usually found in your statement of work. I do have examples of statements of work if y'all need them. You can email me. You have to have a maximum amount and schedule of payments to be made, and the maximum amount needs to be specific and printed out. You can't just break it down. This year we're going to pay $10,000, this year $12,000. It has to have the whole specific maximum amount. You have to have an itemized budget if it's cost reimbursement. You have to have a list of deliverables, the schedule of when these are going to be delivered, and performance measures. All right, to continue with minimum contract requirements, you have to have a monitoring plan, and this needs to be specific too. You just can't say we're going to monitor this contract. It has to be weekly, monthly, yearly, some type of monitoring plan. There has to be the responsibility for taxes, and this is under Act 211. There has to be termination clauses for cause and convenience. You have to have a remedies of default clause, legislative auditors clause, assignability clause, any required anti-discrimination language, your travel requirements or PP49, or the travel is actually included in the cost of the contract. LSU has PPM 13, and that's only for LSU. You have to have a fiscal funding clause if the duration of the contract crosses the fiscal year. And then to be completed in the purchase order, there's a spot for the Act 87 discretionary or non-discretionary to be completed. And attorney contracts need the tort language and the affidavit language. And we do have templates for contracts and professional contracts on our website that cover these. Okay, we're gonna talk about the appropriate approvals that were needed for contracts. You need civil service approval, and there are exemptions to this, and you can find this on the civil service website, and it's civilservice.louisiana.gov divisions, and it's under employee relations. It's kind of hard to find, but that's the link, civilservice.louisiana.gov divisions, employee relations, and then contracts, and this will give you all your exemptions. You need the Attorney General's approval for legal services. You need the Office of General Counsel for legal services. Amendments to a contract are exempt from Office of General Counsel. Legislator auditor approval for financial auditing services state agencies. You also need the Louisiana Department of Revenue approval. Office of Telecommunications and Management. Appropriate Governing Board, Board of Regents, LCTCS. And then you need your delegation of authority. The agency signer must have authorization to sign the contract. To get this delegation, a letter is sent to OSP to Pam Rice, and then Pam Rice will approve that delegation of authority. Okay, we're going to move on to the attachments that are needed to the contract. The contract, as said before, has to go through budget if it's greater than $20,000 or greater, and so we need the signed BA-22 form. We're going to need a certification letter if the contract is greater than $5,000. A late letter if the contract is submitted to OSPC more than 60 days after the begin date of the contract. Co-ops have to have the late letter sent 45 days before the contract start date. If the co-op is sent after 45 days, you need a late letter for that also. A board resolution if they're a corporation. Also for co-ops, you need a board resolution or a signee for all LLCs. Disclosure of ownership for profit corporations unless they're publicly traded. And if you go to the Secretary of State's website and you, under Secretary of State Business Services, search for Louisiana business filings, you can print out that form, which is basically the certificate of authority, and then under their attachments at the bottom, you'll have where it will say disclosure of ownership has been submitted. So you can just send in, and we recommend you actually just go to the Secretary of State and get used to going for every contract and just go ahead and submit that in. Resumes for consultants and multi-year letters for contracts that extend beyond 12 months. A lot of people mess this up. We don't need them if they extend a fiscal year, just if they're longer than 12 months.
We did have a question come in asking, can you please explain the purpose of the disclosure of ownership, the LDR, and the LDR exemption, and when are they required?
Okay. The LDR is required for every contract. It has to go through LDR for tax purposes. The LDR exemption is if they're a nonprofit 501c corporation, there will be a form that Department of Revenue can get you, and we can get you that link. And the contractor will fill out that form, and then it'll go through LDR, and they'll make that exemption. And then out-of-state companies that don't file taxes or are not going to be responsible for taxes in Louisiana will also use an exemption form. The disclosure of ownership is for corporations that, unless they're publicly traded, all corporations, all INCs have to have a disclosure of ownership.
Okay, if the funding comes directly from the feds or private sources, do we still have to insist on state travel limits?
Yes. Yes. Still have, unless the cost is included in the contract. You can wrap in that cost in the contract and not have to use the state travel limits.
Okay, and we have one last question come in. When is a sole proprietorship letter required?
It's not required. but it is always nice to have those. But you don't need sole proprietorship letter or for an LLC. Just going to need board resolutions for corporations.
Okay, that's all we have for now.
Okay, now we're going to talk about performance evaluations. RS 3959 1B requires that all contracts that are sent in completed need performance evaluations, and they need to be sent in within 60 days of completion of the services. Not the end of the contract date specifically, but when those services are finished, they have to be sent in 60 days. A performance needs to be completed. This includes contracts and amendments approved under delegation of authority. Those that don't come to OSP, they still need a performance evaluation. Contract types that are exempt from these are co-ops, your governmental contracts, and your agency contracts. Those are not needed. Using agency has the full responsibility for diligent administration and monitoring of the contract. And if your contract amendment was approved by OSP-PC, a copy must be sent to OSP-PC. And we review these before, if there's a continuation of services on a new contract, we'll review these, and these hold up a lot of contracts because people are not sending them in. And let me talk to this for a second too. Performance evaluations can be sent to the help desk. They're also a place in the purchase order under attachments where you can attachment to the contract, but it's to that contract. A lot of people are attaching them to the new contract when we request one. It doesn't need to be attached to the contract that you're currently working on. It needs to be attached to the contract, the previous contract. Also on this, there is a spot which will speed up our process too, because a lot of times you're working on contracts and it won't have a previous contract. We still have to go check and look for that, see if there's a previous contract, and it takes time to do that. Especially some contracts have been going on for 15 years, and it just takes more time to get your contract approved. Under the PO, under header, and then agency tab, on the bottom right, there's a previous PO contract number. If you fill that out, that'll expedite the process, and if there's no contract, you can just put in NPK is what we use, no previous contract, or something saying that there's no contract. And fill that in, and then we won't come back and go, is there a performance evaluation? Or we will ask for the performance evaluation, but that will speed up the process a lot. That's holding up a lot of my contracts. And then also on how submitting a performance evaluation through LeGov, if you go to that notes and attachments utility, you select the PO, you enter the PO number. This will bring you to the comment screen. Under there, there's click on OSP-PC performance report email. If you upload it to that and hit that email, it will go to the appropriate person in the desktop, and that will solve, and then we'll have it. All right, I guess we'll take any questions you'll have.
Okay, somebody asked, can you tell us how to get a certificate of authority for an out-of-state contractor, and is there an example somewhere?
Okay, if you go to the Secretary of State's website and search their business filings, they will have whether that out-of-state contractor is registered, and that serves as the certificate of authority and their disclosure of ownership. If the contractor is out of state and they're not going to physically be in the state working for more than 30 days, then you can just do an out-of-state justification letter, and you won't need that certificate of authority. For example, a certificate of authority for that company to do business in Virginia serves us no purpose. So really what you want to do in most cases is the out-of-state justification letter. Or they will have already filed with the Louisiana State Secretary of State and that's where you would go under the business filings listing and do the search there.
And I did put that link in the chat for anybody that needs to go to the Secretary of State website and look for that. Okay, our next question, if you are renewing a contract with a quasi-governmental agency, when are the performance evaluations due?
Those are going to be due the same as the other contracts, 60 days after the services are finished.
Okay, can you give information on when to use different payment types, like fixed fees?
Fixed fees are going to be, you hire a plumber for $20 an hour. That's going to be a fixed fee. Or, you know, if you have a budget where they're going to pay employees, there's cost for travel and all that, that's when you're going to need an itemized budget. But fixed fees are usually just for personal services. Graphic design artist is going to say, we're going to be $100 an hour. That's going to be a fixed fee.
Okay, the next question is, well, we have a 3-year contract that expires, but we are doing a 1-year extension. Do we have to do a performance evaluation after the 3-year contract or after the end of the 1-year extension?
If you're doing an amendment to the contract to extend it for 1 year, yeah, you can't, really, let me retract on that. The contracts, it can't go over 3 years. So, once you get to the 3-year limit, you're going to have to enter a new contract into LaGov, and we will need a performance evaluation on that 3-year contract that expires.
Okay, is the out-of-state exemption letter the same thing as the LDR exemption?
No, those are separate. One's for tax purposes, one's for, to make sure they have authority to work in the state of Louisiana under the Secretary of State.
Okay, do you have to wait until after the current contract expires to complete the performance evaluation?
No, you complete it when the services are actually done. So say the contract ends June 30th, but they finish the services February, you would have till April 30th to get the performance evaluation in.
That's all we have so far. If anybody else has any questions, you can type them into the chat or the Q&A.
And I just wanted to emphasize again, like Brad and I talked about, if you please go to the OSP website and under professional contracts, there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of helpful information there. There's forms, templates. There's actually contracts you can look at, contract templates you can use, BA-22 examples. There's just a lot of helpful information there that that'll speed up the whole process. So if you can, please go to that website and just study the information on there. It's really helpful.
Okay, somebody just asked, can you provide information on why a scientist is no longer classified as a professional type service?
That was, that classification was just changed from professional to consulting just recently. We had a lot of discussion about that, and our director here of professional contracts, we got together and did research on it, and scientist is now under consulting.
I don't have any other questions.
And this is our contact information. If you have any questions, please give us a call, especially if you're in the beginning of the contract process. Like Jeff said earlier, if we can help you before the process gets started, it'll make things a lot easier. I have a contract right now that's classified as professional. It's consulting. It's over the consulting limit. So now they're going to have to either reduce the amount of money in the contract, or they're going to have to do an RFP on it, which is going to take forever. So if they would have asked previously, this would not, wouldn't have to be dealing with all these issues.
So I did have a question, and who would train on how to enter contracts in LaGov? The easy answer is LaGov. Unfortunately, OSP does not give trainings on how to enter things into their systems.
We will be more than glad, to walk you through the process, but, you know, we've been deferring people to, put in a LaGov help ticket, but we will, if you give us a call, we will help you through the process as much as we can. But there are certain things that we have to defer to LaGov on. But like I said, just give us a call if you're having trouble, and we'll try our best to walk you through the process.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you all.
Thanks.